Yo,
How are you doing?
doing well.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's been so long.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, it's actually been like 3 minutes since I saw you last. How you doing? All right? All good, everybody? You've got 25 people in so far. What we usually do is just like wait a few minutes for people to filter in. Let's get the chat open so I can see anybody's questions. And if you do have any questions for Mackenzie, get them lined up in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Can anybody hear and see us okay? I presume you can, and if you can't, send a complaint in the chat. Just bringing up some names. Hi everybody. Hey Tom, all is good. Good news. 29 in, 31. Let's have a look who's here. Hey Colleen. Hey Emily. Hey Greg. Hey Mark. Good to see you. Ryan.
How do I see the chat? I'm missing that.
In your Zoom window, it should be at the bottom. You should be able to open up the chat.
You see Q&A, but oh, not a big deal. You can just pass questions along to me.
Yeah, I'll field questions for you. Don't worry. Hey Ryan.
Cool.
So we've got 31 in. I think we just wait another couple of minutes before we get started. So
yeah, for sure.
We're going to do a poll in a minute about just like a general Webflow experience, but I guess everybody here has kind of some exposure to Webflow in various degrees. Is anybody building a project on Webflow right now? Yes. Yep.
Got a few.
Got a few. Did you find the chat?
I did, yeah.
Nice job.
Took me a minute.
Try and spend the time. Yep. In the next few weeks. Cool. Taking the Flamingo course.
Oh, hey Tiff.
Yeah, I wanted to say congratulations on launching Flamingo. If anybody hasn't heard of it, this is Mackenzie's course that you put blood, sweat, and tears into over the last month. By all accounts, probably embedded too much time and effort in to make it perfect, but it came out really well. I'm sure everyone would agree with me.
Thank you.
You've seen it?
Just in case anybody wants to follow along, you can go to flamingo.co/makerpad. This is a page I'm going to be going through to explain everything, all the foundational stuff.
Nice. So while everyone's, we'll give everyone 1 more minute just in case anyone's joining late. So why don't we go through like a bit of a outline of what we'll be covering today, and then we'll pop a poll out to see where everyone's at experience-wise.
Yeah, so I just want to cover like the foundational stuff. So we're going to talk about the box model, classes in Webflow, and how to name classes. Also some shortcuts, and then we can do some like Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer any questions and such.
Nice. Sounds good. Okay, let's get this poll brought in. So we've got 2 questions. Here you go. So looking for a gauge on your Webflow skills. So how much experience do you have with the Webflow, and which other web builders have you used? You should see a poll pop up on your screen now.
Greg, the URL is flamingo.co/makerpad. So I can just pop that in the chat, I think, actually.
Yeah. I think also if you're in chat, when you are sending a message, change the blue tab to all panelists and attendees. I think by default at the moment, I don't know why, the messages only come to all panelists, so nobody else in the chat can see each other.
Okay. How's that?
There you go. It's the
Cool.
same
Cool. Cool.
for everybody.
Interesting. Okay.
Strange. I don't know why. Okay, so poll results. We have 11 0 experience, 15 some experience, 3 lots, and 0 people wrote the book on it. That's good. Other web builders, we've got some Squarespace users, some WordPress users, then a few on Wix and Card. Cool.
Okay. Okay.
So, Mackenzie, if you want to get started, let's take it away. Any questions for Mackenzie, put it in the Q&A tab or ask him in the chat, and then I can field them and then interject at the point where I think he might be useful.
Sure. So let's just start with the box model. So the box model basically means that everything on the web is a box. So a div block, a paragraph, an image, every HTML element is a box. You can stack boxes inside of boxes, and by default, all the boxes stack on top of each other and go full width. And you can control like the spacing on the outside of the box by using margin, and on the inside of the box by using padding. So it's helpful to think of everything as a box, because you can't just like, unlike some other builders, you can't just like drag and drop elements on any spot on the page. You have to like think about how to use some boxes to control other boxes inside of those to get the layout you want. And it's also helpful to think of everything as boxes as you like go from desktop to tablet size to mobile, because everything can basically go one way, and then you can change the CSS to change the direction of the boxes and everything on different sizes. Okay, so CSS, that is how you will control your boxes, basically. You'll, no, whoops, let me move that. You'll, no worries. Where was I? Yeah, it's basically like how you tell your HTML elements like what to do, how to behave, what to look like, and such. You can think of it as like a to-do list for, or you can think of like a class as a to-do list for your HTML element. So in order to apply styles to an HTML element, you need to add a class. In Webflow, you do that in this little selector right here. By default, let me rewind. So a class is like a to-do list. So for example, this container class I have, any element that has this container will have a width of 100%, a max width of 1296 pixels, a margin of 0 on top and bottom, and auto on left and right, and a padding of 24 pixels. So it basically goes through that list and adds that to any instance with that container class. So it's like a to-do list. It'll run through that list and add all those styles to it. If you need to override that list, so for example, if you wanted to change the width of the container class, you would then need to use a combo class. So a combo class is basically like a tag or an additional tag, a modifier for your class. And it makes it so you can override or tweak styles with keeping some of the styles, but overriding some others. So for example, in this example, it's container, and then container medium is the combo class, and that just changes the width from max width of 1296 to a max width of 768. And if you guys have any questions, or if I'm going too fast, let me know.
Yeah. So what? Just to ask like a bit of like a high level question.
Sure.
So the whole like box model and like combo class and everything, they seem like fairly like unique to Webflow. Am I right in saying that?
It's okay. So Webflow is basically just an abstraction of HTML and CSS. It's instead of like hand typing the headings and the divs and everything, you are basically doing it all visually, and then Webflow takes care of the code and spits everything out to be formatted properly. So it's not necessarily unique to Webflow, but it's just like how the web works, like the HTML structure and such.
Got it. Because I think we see a lot of people who are either like starting out building projects in these simple like templated builders, and they kind of graduate up into Webflow and they need a bit more like control, and maybe they understand like the fundamentals of actually assembling a web page together.
Yeah, yeah. Webflow definitely gives you a lot more control because you can basically do anything that you would coding by hand. Well, almost anything. So it gives you like almost unlimited like flexibility and functionality to build whatever your heart's desire. But you still have to like know how to like properly structure your content and name classes and such. That's why like having a basic knowledge of HTML and CSS definitely helps when you're learning Webflow.
Got it.
Okay. So in addition, so whenever you start working on a class, so say I just select this paragraph and I want it red, I could just I could apply a class directly to this. But if I wanted to target every single instance of the paragraph, Webflow gives you the ability to target default classes. It's not really a class, it's basically just targeting all or every instance of a element. So every paragraph or every list item, stuff like that. So I could, or like a heading and such. So I could select this paragraph, all pages, and then change the color from red to pink. And that updates every instance of a paragraph on my page. Let me undo that so I don't mess up my page. You can even apply stuff directly to the body, which is kind of nice. This is where I apply like all my default styles and such. So you can go up to the body, which is the root of every single page on your site, select body, all pages, and then I define like the font weight, size, and such, and the color. You can also set the background color if you want something different than the default white. But everything inherits down from that, which is nice. We'll get into that in a sec. Also, there's different states for classes. So if I had like a link, if I made drop down a link, and we'll go to like lomingo.co. Probably should do www. Okay, I could select that link, go to all links if I wanted, and then I could add a hover state to that and change the color or underline it or do really whatever I want. But that only gets applied when a user hovers over that with their mouse. So there's a few different states you can do. There's hover, there's pressed, and focused. So pressed is when it's clicked. Focused is if you like tab through the page and that element gets selected. Let me undo. Okay, there we go. So CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So the cascading part is important. Basically, everything inherits down. So remember when I said I define like the base styles of my site on the body? That's because like I want every element on my page to use a specific font and start off at a specific font size and color. If I want everything to be tweaked from there, I can then go and style just the paragraphs. And if I want something different from all the paragraphs, I can go ahead and add a class and add a specific style, like change the font color or something. And then if I want to modify that class, I can add a combo class. So it's really helpful to think like everything like inherits down. It's also important to note that you don't have to add a class for everything. So just the same way the styles would inherit from the body, they also inherit from the parent. So everything inherits from the parent unless you give it a override with a class, basically. So an example I use all the time is like a post. If I already have a div with some text inside of it and it's a post, I don't need to add a class to that div block. I can instead just add the styles directly to the post wrap, and all the styles on the text box will inherit from that, if
Gotcha.
that makes sense.
Absolutely. There's a question which may be relevant at the moment. We don't have to go into some parts. So from Emily, what's the first thing you do in creating a Webflow project from scratch, i.e. establishing fonts, colors, and styling? Would you do that first, or would you do that kind of as you go?
I usually dive in and set the body styles first. I feel like that's a good place to start. I try to, it really just depends on the project. Some projects I go through and like create a style guides for like an H1 through an H6, the paragraph, text, list, buttons, basically every element, give style that. But a lot of my personal projects, if I'm not like planning on somebody else seeing it, I don't really worry too much about that. And I just like do as I go. But the
Gotcha.
first thing I do is almost always set the font and the font sizes and colors and such.
Gotcha. Nice. Hopefully that answers your question, Emily. Cool.
All right. So naming classes is kind of the most difficult thing, it turns out, in Webflow. When I first started doing web design stuff, it was like, what should I name? It was like a constant struggle. Like, what should I name this? What should I name this? Like, this doesn't make sense. So a helpful, oh yeah. So by default, Webflow doesn't require you to add a class. So for example, if I wanted this paragraph to be red, I could just go into the color, or pink. I could just go to the color and change it to pink. And it automatically adds a class for you. This is a slippery slope though, because you can easily end up with like 25 or however many classes when you don't really need to. And that just makes your life a lot harder because one, div block 73 is not descriptive at all. Like you wouldn't know what it does by looking at it, or what it controls, or what it's supposed to do. And also like it's hard to like know, oh, I can reuse this class here when it's just like div block 73, if that makes
Absolutely. I
sense.
think we've run into this where we currently have this issue with the Makerpad site. So I'm going to
Yeah.
timestamp this for Ben, because I know he'll be watching this back. Has anybody else run into div block 73 issues who's here in chat at the moment? Is anyone nodding along right now? I think it is more
um,
common than people like to admit.
oh, for sure. Like I did that a ton when I first started out.
Story of my life too. Okay, nice.
So a helpful way to um, structure your naming, a helpful like naming convention that you can use is called BEM. BEM stands for block, element, and modifier. So in this example, I have a post that's wrapping all the content, and that would be the block. The post thumbnail, the post description, post buttons, those would be the elements inside that block. And then you can see this post button is white, and that would be using a modifier. So the post button class would be one thing, and then I wanted to change the color to white, so I used the combo class, and that would be a modifier. So BEM usually has a very specific like way you write it. It's like the block is just the name of the block, and then the modifier or the element is underscore name of the element, and then the modifier is dash dash profile. Personally, I don't love that convention. I do love the structure of them, but I don't love that naming convention. So I stick with that structure for my own stuff. And then I usually just make it like a little bit more reader friendly because
Mhm.
Webflow still like spits it out properly. It'll like it'll like lowercase everything and put a dash in between all of it. So I usually would, instead of doing it like post underscore description, I would just do post description and post button wrap and post button. And then this would be post button and then post button secondary. So it's just
Got it.
like a little bit easier to read when you're like in the Webflow
Mhm.
description or selector, I mean.
Got it. Nice. No, I really like that. It's good to see it actually like visually on the screen. Like you have this image here. I think that's really useful because you never really see it laid out like that
Mm-hmm.
unless you're actually kind of building it yourself. And even if you're building it yourself, you don't see it like
Yeah.
this. That's a really useful image actually.
I actually built this. It's all basically just like little divs everywhere.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. Nice.
So basically, your goal with classes, there's no like hard or fast rule. Like you need to name it this way or do it this way. It's basically like you can do certain things to make your life easier down the road. Um, you want to use as few classes as possible. You want to inherit from parent elements and the body as much as possible. So, like defining like all your headings and all your paragraphs, all your links and such, and then adding a class if the design calls for it. But that just like makes it easier to maintain down the road, so you don't have like um, a bunch of conflicting classes and a bunch of styles that act one way on like one screen size and different. It basically just makes your life easier moving forward.
Yeah, and it makes you avoid actually having to go back and the pain that is involved in that. So if you're sending out your store
Yeah.
early on, it just makes sense to carry on that way and it's easier. Should we answer some questions that are in the chat just covering box model and CSS before we move on to the next
Yeah, for
section? So
sure.
we've got one from Albert. Do you go for the default container in Webflow or do you set up a custom div block container class? What would you suggest?
So I almost always go with just a div block. Um, that started out because you couldn't override the default container back in the day. I believe I can, let's see, let's go in this. I can drop in a container element and I think I can just add the container. Okay, and yeah, those styles get applied to the container. Um, but I think just from doing it for years, it's kind of like default for me to use a div instead and just name it container,
Got it.
if that makes
Um,
sense.
Alberto, a fonts on a style guide following a standard.
Say that again.
I'm not sure if you can expand on that, Alberto. He says, are fonts on a style guide following a standard? So I guess you're creating a style guide on your site.
Yeah, you want to keep like as many styles as consistent with each other as possible.
Oh, sorry, he meant
You
font sizes. Font sizes on a style guide following a standard. Oh, do you mean like headings through to subheadings to paragraphs?
okay? That like depends on the design, I would think, or I would say. So like some designs like need smaller font sizes. I recently did your V1, and we use like really big font sizes for like the headings and even like the checklists and stuff.
Hmm.
So it really depends on the design. I do try
Got it.
to scale it down consistently. I aim for like 20% ish, like on desktop, 20% lower on tablet. That's not like a hard and fast rule. I do it by whatever looks best. Um, but yeah.
Nice. Um, to keep your site responsive across all devices, do you recommend setting a font size using pixels, view height, etc., or does that matter?
I don't think it matters too much. If you use like rem, it like scales based on the sizing of the viewport, I believe. I think, don't quote me on that, but I think that's how it works. I usually stick with just pixels. I don't think it really makes that big of a difference as long as you make sure to like check it on each size. Basically, every element you need to check on desktop, you need to check on tablet and mobile landscape, mobile portrait. Just make sure it looks good and scales down properly. Because if you have like if I used, I think this was a 6.5 rem. I used rem for this site, by the way. If I use 6.5 rem on mobile, it would probably break the layout and cause some horizontal scrolling just because it's so big.
Got it. When creating font classes, can you create a class for all headings and use a different class for paragraphs? So when you change one heading, all headings change, but the paragraph stays the same.
Yes. So you would use the default here. So if I had a heading, you would just go into the selector and select all H1 headings. You can do the same if, change it to H2. You would then just do all H2 headings, and the same applies to paragraphs and buttons and such. Or maybe not buttons. Let's see. Button would be considered a link, so all links could get a specific style.
Got it.
So
use a flashy shortcut then. So we're going to get into that in a minute.
We will get into that for sure. You could also use like a rich text block, which acts a little bit differently. So basically, you can give a class name to this, say tutorial rich text, and you can then select all the elements inside of here, and you can set it to where styles only get applied. So I could select all H2 nested inside the rich text or tutorial rich text class. And then that would not get applied to every H2, but only H2s inside of the rich text block. And then you can like double click in here and like add like a list and like block quotes and such. So I could change this to like a block quote, and then you can go in and like style it. This is good for like blog posts, and I use it on like the lessons page. So like right here, this is a rich text field, and I basically have like specific styling just for the rich text block on this page versus like all my other pages. I think I made like the font sizes just like slightly larger, so it's a little bit easier to read and such.
Got it. Nice.
Okay,
Question in the chat from Tom, just quickly. If when you start a site, do you make a page with all components on there?
It depends if I'm planning to pass it off to somebody. If it's a personal site, I don't really bother with it. But also it depends on if the design is done. So like some sites, I know like I have the full design like flushed out in Figma or something, and I'll just go in and build it in Webflow. In that case, like it's pretty easy to go through one by one, be like, this should be this size, this color, and like style it all. But if I'm like designing in Webflow, which I do from time to time, I usually just do it as I need. And then like when I'm ready to launch, I like make sure I go through and everything like is consistent and everything looks good on all the various sizes and such.
Got it. Nice. Cool. Let's move on. If there's any other questions about box model or CSS classes or inheritance, etc., we can get back to that at the end if you've got a bit of time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, good questions.
Okay, so last up, let's just talk about shortcuts. So you've seen me use my all-time favorite shortcut. You can basically do anything with it. It's Command E. I think also Command K works. Yeah, it's the find anything, add anything panel. In addition, you can do Command Enter. So like if you have a paragraph selected, I could do Command Enter and it inputs or highlights the selector, and I can just type a class. So those two in combination, you can kind of like not really have to use your mouse. So for example, say I wanted to, inside this container, I could drop in a div, name that container, um, drop in another div using Command E. I could name that like grid halves, and you can just like drop in another div and quickly build out your content. And like inside this div, I could add a heading. I could add, could add like a text block and maybe a button. And then I could just add the button class. It makes it so you can work super, super fast without really needing to like touch your mouse at all. And you can like use the up and down arrows to select the different layers. So let me open up the layers panel. So I have this table row selected. I can go up and down to like go inside. Like if I wanted to, if I had this table row wrap selected, I could go down into the table row, down and select the table row header. If I wanted to move to the next one, you can hold Option and click down and it'll jump to the next element. You can use left and right to select different siblings within the same element or within the same parent. And also let me know if I'm going too fast.
No, I feel like I should know that, but I had no idea, and it's incredible. Is anybody else
Also,
figuring that out for the first time?
all the shortcuts are available if you just hit question mark. So shift and question mark. It'll show you everything right here. This isn't a full list that I have right here. This is just the ones that like I personally use pretty often. So
That's
escape
amazing.
key, you can have something selected, hit the escape key to deselect it basically. Delete, obviously you can hit delete and it'll delete that element. If you do Command Z, it can undo that. Command Shift Z redoes it. So undo, redo. Command C and Command V for copy and paste. I use those constantly. So if I wanted to like copy this whole table, I could go to the where is it? Table wrap, just copy and paste that, and it duplicates that down below, which is super handy.
I didn't know also on the copy and paste, you can copy and paste things from one site into another, can't you?
You
On
can,
Webflow.
yeah. I haven't had the best luck with that just because it causes some classes to like duplicate. Like
Mhm.
they duplicate some classes to prevent issues. So I'll
Okay.
have to like go in and basically rename a lot of classes, which
It's annoying.
personally, yeah, it's kind of annoying. I find that to be more work than just like dropping in the elements and naming it,
Especially if
depending
you
on
know
what I'm doing.
shortcuts.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Nice. That's
All
awesome.
of this like makes your life so much easier, and like the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. But this can like Command E, Command Enter is
Mhm.
probably the greatest thing they've added to Webflow, honestly. So like
Nice.
any new page, I would like have the body selected. Let's see if I can select that. I would drop in a section, name that section. I would drop in a div, name that container. container. And I'm using like the up and down arrows to select these classes, by the way. And then you can just drop in your content. Whoops. Command E, do like a heading. In addition, let me just undo all this real quick.
I feel like we're exploring a different level of Webflow skills right now.
In addition, you can in addition to like dropping things in, you can jump between pages. So you can do Command E, type in home, jump to the home page. If I wanted to go to my lessons template, I could Command E, find that. I can even go into like the CMS. So I can open up the CMS lessons and then find each one here.
Nice.
So yeah, Command E is basically the greatest shortcut. It'll change your life. I guarantee it.
That's
Let's
amazing.
see what else
I
is
don't think
there.
I've ever used that before.
It's life-changing for sure. When I found it, and I also realized that you can like automatically select or add a class in the selector. That was a game changer for sure.
Okay. Honest answers only. Who has used Command E before and who hasn't? I can't be the only one that hasn't ever used it. And there was a question from Emily in the chat as well. Do you use folders within Webflow?
Occasionally. I don't think I have any on this site though. You want to use folders like if you need a directory of static pages. So if I wanted to create like, what's an example? I would say blog, but you probably don't want to set it up like that. Say you want to set up a blog with static pages, which you should never do. You could set up a folder named blog. So it would be flamingo/blog and then the name of your pages inside that.
Mm-hmm.
So it really just depends on what I need to do. There might be some like SEO benefits. I'm not too great at that though, so I can't really talk about that too well. I'm not really sure. So don't quote me on that.
Another question for Emily: do you create larger breakpoints, i.e., 1440 pixels in your projects?
Sometimes I have like on my telly template, I just like grew the max width a bit. I haven't really like found a good use for it personally. Like the way I think about designs is like, I know like a lot of people talk about like mobile first, but I have always been like desktop first. I think about the largest point to begin with, and then like think about it as it scales down. So if I needed something specific, I could probably just get away with setting like a max width on the main size. So like if I wanted the max width for this main desktop to be like 1600, I could do that. I wouldn't need a larger breakpoint. But it is definitely handy in case you do need that. One kind of a bummer issue I've run into is that sites that do have it, the flow of shortcuts gets changed. So if you type 2, you can jump to tablet size, 3 is mobile landscape, 4 is mobile portrait, and 1, of course, is desktop. If you add a larger breakpoint, that becomes 1. So also another thing is styles that you add to the larger breakpoints do not inherit down, do not go down to the main one. So I've spent hours creating styles on a larger breakpoint by accident, only to realize, oh shit, now I have to undo everything and add those again to the main breakpoint, which is frustrating.
Gotcha.
So long answer, or yeah, basically I
Yeah,
don't
no,
really use
that's
it,
useful.
but it is useful if you have a design that calls for it.
Gotcha. So one question I had is, I know
Sure.
we've touched on creating projects for like yourself and creating projects for clients. Obviously, when it's for yourself, it's probably more like freestyle, and you can kind of tweak things as you go because you're probably going to change it a lot more, etc.
Mm-hmm.
How, let's say you were taking on a new client project from scratch, like blank slate, you could like be designing this yourself also. How would you like go about structuring that project from the first time you open like a blank Webflow slate? What would be like the process you go through from either elements on screen, containers, style guides, etc.? Could you like walk us through like how you go through that in your head?
Um, yeah, I normally start designs in Figma first. That's just easier for me to like explore and be creative without having to think of the HTML structure. For me, I've realized HTML structure like hinders my creativity because instead of like thinking, should this look like this? I think, okay, how can I structure this to look like this? And it's just like a slightly different mindset, and it takes away from that. So I normally start in Figma, and at that point, like if I'm working with a client, I have like the design mostly flushed out, and then I can like just go through and start building out the pages. So almost everything starts with Command E section, Command Enter, type in section, Command E container, and so on. And then I just like build out the various designs.
Got it.
Um, I like to create a style guide as I go, unless I know like exactly what I'm doing. So if I have
Mhm.
like the entire design fleshed out, then I'll usually create a like a page slash style guide and then add all my styles there. Otherwise, it's usually just like tweaking it as the design calls for it.
Got it. What's like some of the nuance you'd like, which are kind of unique problems to run into at Webflow? It could be things to do with like the CMS or templated pages, something which is kind of like a unique feature which you may have like run into once or twice. 'Cause I know there is a bit of nuance to actually um, like in some portions of Webflow where you need to deal with different things. I don't know if that makes sense, that question. Um,
Mm.
what's like a common problem you see when people are kind of like building out either like templated sites or working off of a template? One common thing we see, or I get questions from people, is okay, I bought like a template and now I'm working with it and I don't know how to like change things, or you can like start messing things up.
Yeah, um, that's definitely a big one. I think it's easy to like start with a template or get a project passed off to you and then be like, oh, I want this selector panel to be like have a background of pink. Um, but then, oh shit, it also changes all those other ones. And those other ones might not be on this page. So you might not
Mhm.
realize that you're what you're doing.
Yep.
So in that case, it's either better to like click this little arrow and duplicate the class or just add a combo class. So I try to be like as thoughtful as possible without thoughtful as possible about naming classes as I can be. I try to be like as like descriptive as I can and also like reuse as many classes as I can. So one class like this container class is used probably hundreds of times throughout my site. So if you didn't realize that and you changed the width of this, only wanting it changed, like if I wanted this container class to actually be this width and I
Mhm.
changed it, it would affect everything on the site.
Got it.
I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
Yeah, no, that is probably like a really good use case. I've had that before where you're just trying to change one thing and you just change everything. And then you try
yeah,
and
yeah,
add like a combo class and you're like, oh God, especially if you're not like well versed with Webflow.
yeah.
Another one
It's
might be
easy to
worth,
mess up.
yeah,
Sorry,
for
go ahead.
sure. No, sorry. I was going to say another one which may be worth looking at is symbols. Do you only use symbols for the like footer and nav bar? And is there any unique ways of working with them?
So symbols are great. I obviously use them for like the navigation and the footer. On a few pages, I have this as a symbol, this little call to action. Um, I don't use the this testimonial block should probably be a symbol. And that's because like it's basically the same HTML structure. It's basically just the image and the quote and bio that swaps out. So if I wanted to, I could like turn this into a symbol, call this testimonial. Webflow just added overrides, which is super, super cool. So um, I could like change the image and swap out the image um, just for one instance of that symbol.
Got it.
So everything still, so I believe how it works is like the styles and such still would apply. And I think the structure applies as well inside of a symbol. So I could like swap out the image, say I wanted to go in here and change the direction, have the, whoops, not that, have the avatar to be on the other side. That would update all those instances of the symbol, but the overrides would still be intact.
Ah,
So it makes it
nice.
easy to like anything that you can reuse should probably be a symbol. It just makes your life easier. If you don't make it a symbol and it's repeatable, it might make sense to set it up as a CMS collection. Um,
Hmm.
in this instance, um, that a CMS collection probably doesn't make the most sense, just because like it's hard to get a specific testimonial. Um, it's easier just to like drop in a symbol in this case. Um,
Is
yeah, I
there a
rambled a bit. I'm not sure if I answered that question.
no, 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 absolutely. I haven't looked at overrides yet. And Greg said, well, that's awesome. So I think it's a good point to touch on. No, Webflow obviously push updates all the time. So often things can be missed. And sometimes you just log in
For
to
sure.
Webflow and you're like, what's that? When did that arrive? Which is always cool. One,
Ooh, I just saw that they added character. I think it's CH 50 CH. Yes, they added CH, which is character limit. So I think I could do like 20, and it basically sets the width to the amount of characters in the text block. Sorry, that was
ah,
random. That was something they just added, which I thought was cool. I haven't used it yet, but that's super, super good for like uh, rich texty stuff
yep.
because like just for legibility and readability, there's like a max width for the amount of characters you want to use. If
Hmm.
it's too wide, it's hard to like scan.
Gotcha.
Anyway, that just makes it
Yeah,
easier.
no,
I
that's
thought that was
cool.
cool.
So should we take some questions? I thought, is there anybody here who's got like a unique problem that they've run into with Webflow that they'd want to see if Mackenzie can solve? Maybe not
Sure.
live, but maybe like because I know that building, whether you're like just starting out or have spent some time on it, you're gonna run into issues all the time. So does anybody have like an issue which they're running into right now, which they'd like Mackenzie to either think about or articulate? or
You could
show?
share a read-only link too if you want me to like check it out live. You can go to the share project and create a read-only link.
Nice. Okay. And Greg had a quick question about, can we talk about the CMS? Greg, what do you want to know about the CMS apart from it's awesome?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
So I know obviously we use a CMS loads at Makerpad with in
Should I
combination
just
with.
walk through how I use it? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so Flamingo's obviously like an online course platform. That's what I built it as. I have a courses template, which pulls in from a course collection. And this is how it's set up right here. So for each course that I add, I have a description, overview video, thumbnail, lesson count, course length, difficulty. I also have a reference to the first lesson, and that basically allows me to reference another collection and say, this is the first lesson, and then I can link to that from the template page. So right here, I think it is, I have this link going to this first lesson reference field. So all that's dynamic, which means like I could change that if I wanted to, or I could do it differently from each course, which is pretty cool. The lessons themselves, this is what the template looks like. The way I have it, I messed this up. That needs to be fixed. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that.
Nice.
The way I have it set up is you log into my site using MemberStack. So I have basically two duplicate collections for courses and lessons. And the reason I do that is because anybody without JavaScript could potentially view the lessons and such if they just like have JavaScript turned off. So to go around that, I have all the courses and lessons like duplicated. So you can only access it if you're logged in to this. But then I also have like the normal lessons page, which allows you to like preview certain lessons. And that's just defined with a switch inside the CMS. So let's see this one. If it's locked, if that's turned on, it basically locks it and doesn't show the video.
Gotcha.
I also have members. So every MemberStack member gets created in the CMS for a unique member dashboard.
Yep. I think we could probably do a whole hour on like CMS and like integrations and MemberStack and Airtable and all that good stuff. So Greg had a comment saying, "Wait, did I say you can circumvent MemberStack by turning off JavaScript?"
Yeah, there's some JavaScript you can add to like prevent that. So you can like turn it on so if JavaScript is turned off for the user's browser, it'll automatically forward them to a different page. I didn't love
useful.
that. Eventually, like Member or Webflow, I think will probably add like member user systems and such. So you'll basically be able to build all that inside your Webflow site. But until that happens, like MemberStack makes it so you can do that.
Gotcha. Interesting. Everyone wants to check their membership sites then. Reach out. Yeah, so we could do like a load on the CMS stuff. We've got 3 minutes until we've been going an hour, which has flown by. Tom said one thing I've not cracked yet is the Airtable Zapier Webflow CMS. Yeah, I think like referencing and multi-references can be tricky, and I know some people have got like good Integromat solutions, like Ben Parker, Visual Dev. There's a lot of that sort of thing, which is cool.
I did a course on that setup actually. It's on Makerpad.
Oh,
It's on YouTube.
yeah, go
if you
to
wanna check
if
it
you're a
out.
Makerpad member, we have a building projects or building side projects boot camp where Mackenzie actually hosts a mini course about doing this exact thing. So
Yeah, it's basically, well, it's very close to the setup that I use for Flamingo.
hmm.
The mark as complete functionality in that, if you're going to use that, I would recommend not doing it that way and instead use JetBoost. They just added the
Yep,
favoriting the
agreed.
bookmarking feature or booster. So that makes your life so much easier. It costs extra, but it
JetBoost is
saves
great.
so
I
much
highly
time.
recommend it. So good.
Yeah.
Alberto's got a question. Is having two div blocks in a is having two div blocks in a horizontal flex box the same as having two columns? Sometimes I feel like there are many ways to achieve the same thing.
Oh, for sure. There's a number of ways to do basically anything. So is two divs inside, what was the question again? Two divs inside a horizontal flex,
Yep.
the same
Same as
as
having
the
two columns.
container?
Same as having
Um,
two columns. Yeah.
to be honest, I have never actually used the columns layout in any of my designs. So I have very little experience using that. I'd imagine it's the same. But yeah, you could, so I could like drop in a div in this section and I could call that or flex. Flex vertical is a existing class I use. So that basically does flex horizontal and it aligns the items vertically. So I could then have another div inside that, and that could be like flex content. I'd probably name this differently, but for this example, I could set the height to 1000 pixels, the width to 50%, the background pink so you can see what we're doing. And then inside that flex vertical, I could drop in another div, and that could be like have the heading and whoa, didn't mean to do that. Sorry about that. And we could drop in a heading and like a paragraph and stuff there. So one difference is flex will, yeah, so this is probably a big difference between columns and the flex. So flex will like grow and shrink based on the content. So if, for example, this is set to 50%, but it's not going 50% because this paragraph is like pushing it. If you wanted to make sure it does go 50%, you could just go up to the flex content div and click don't grow or shrink. You could also just set a min width of 50% as well. An easier thing that I like to do is using a grid. It basically is a lot more structured. So if you know you're going to have one column, two column, three column, it makes your life a lot easier because you don't need to define the width of the children. So for this flex item, I had to set both of those to 50%. For the grid, however, you don't need to define that. It just automatically grows and shrinks depending on the amount of columns.
Got it. Nice. So you're if I've learned one thing, it's just divs all the way through for you. No sections, no containers, just boxes in boxes. Which I think is how you started off this whole
Well, I do
talk.
use sections, but I normally
Oh,
use a
okay.
div for a container, and a div for a grid element is the same as just using the grid. It
Got
might
it.
be the same for the columns. I'm not really sure.
Cool. Nice. Has anybody else got any final questions for Mackenzie? I've learned an incredible amount from this last hour. I'm about to go off and learn a whole ton of shortcuts and try adding in all of my elements that way instead of what seems like a bit of a prehistoric dragging and dropping way of working. Now I'm gonna feel like a Neanderthal when I go back into a Webflow project after this.
Funny.
And also, where should people go, Mackenzie, after they've seen this and now they want to learn Webflow?
So you can go to Flamingo if you are interested in checking out the course and mini projects. You can get a mini project for free by signing up at the bottom of this page. So Flamingo/Makerpad, flamingo.co/Makerpad. And I'm Mackenzie Child on Twitter and basically everything else. One thing I should mention real quick is I still have a launch sale that's going on until tomorrow for Flamingo. So if anybody's interested in signing up, you can save $100.
Nice.
Not going to like pressure you or push that or anything, but
I'll pressure
it's there
you.
if you want
Definitely
it.
sign up. Nice. Let me just share my screen. So Mackenzie also is the first person to have their brand new Makerpad profile go live on our new backend. So you can now follow Mackenzie's profile on Makerpad, see what things he's working on, see what tools he uses, see his followers. Here is his links to his website, Twitter, and YouTube. And then you can figure out like what tutorials he's looking at and what tools, etc. So, yep, we worked on getting this up today, and you're gonna be seeing more people added to there. But yeah, Mackenzie is the first one on there. You can see that at makerpad.co/u/Mackenzie Child.
Awesome.
Yeah, Mackenzie, thanks very much for your time today. That was incredible. I'm definitely going to watch this back. I'm sure it's going to be useful for heaps of people. Greg asked as well, final question, are you available for consulting? So hopefully...
So I do offer a one-on-one Zoom session on Flamingo as part of the package if you are interested in that. But other than that, I'm pretty much focused on Flamingo at this point in time. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me. I can't like promise I can solve your questions, but I'll do my best to try. So Mackenzie at Flamingo, or there's a live chat on Flamingo's website as well.
Amazing. Mackenzie, thank you again. And everybody, thank you for listening to us for an hour. I hope you've learned something. And I'm sure there's going to be more of these to come covering various functionality in Webflow, because I know we've definitely got an hour of CMS to do.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Nice. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Have a good week. Stay safe. And see you all soon. Bye.